Yeah, the weather just, last week it was like 75 degrees. You think, wow, spring is here. Yeah. It's not. You got past the winter, break out our t-shirts. Yeah. You got to get some extra line on your coat. It's more resolution. AC Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Puraj Acharya. Asto Tarsada Shri Srimad Divine Grace. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Sharadi Hari Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani Ki Jai. Shri Shri Gauranga Ki Jai. Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the sum devotees. All glories to the sum devotees. All glories to the sum devotees. All glories, Shri Shri Guru Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So maybe this can be a little further away. It's like
off to the side here. There's a
Big Brother. I start reading all those books. That's a little too intense. It's like, wow. It's nice to still have real people in the room. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
So we're reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3. Beginning with text 19, which has no purport, and then 20, which has a 2-sentence purport, and then 21, which has a little bit longer purport. So read all three of those. Share some comments. So should we do maybe I'll just read the first one and then we can do the other ones together. Is that? Okay. It's funny too, because just like we're describing, I don't know, maybe it's the same here. Thursday. No, today's Saturday. So it's Friday. Yeah, Wednesday, I guess, was like this perfect day. Everybody was outside. We lived near a pond, and there's a water, like it was like a city street down around the pond. Everybody was up there walking around with their dogs. Beautiful. And then like the next day, cold. Today outside like frost, right? Like we had snow. Did you have snow?
Yeah.
We had like a half an inch of snow. Yeah, it was like, I took pictures, like, okay, winter, it's like, it's was actually there. It was like really Suka Dukkha, such a place. And some people was like, wow, it's snowing, yay, And some people, and then no, it's hot. Oh, how horrible. And some people like, wow, it's hot, yay. And then people are like, no, horrible. So it's according to our senses and our perception. So, okay, text 19. I'll just read this one and then we'll get up to 21, we'll do it together. Visasarjatmana kayam navinam tamstamomayam jagrihor yaksharaksham ratrim chutrit samudbhavan. Out of disgust, Brahma threw off the body of ignorance, and taking this opportunity, yakshas and rakshasas sprang for possession of the body, which continue to exist in the form of night. Night is the source of hunger and thirst. No purport, text 20. Shrutribyam upashrishtaste tam jatum anti adhidru vuba durvu malakshattainam yakshadvam ichuchu chutrit arditaha. These are words, they're not repeated very often, right? Like a lot of like sattvic words are repeated again and again. These are different. Spare him. To spare him, not eat him up. You see that? Right? Overpowered by hunger and thirst, they ran to devour Brahma from all sides and cried, spare him, not eat him up. So I'm glad we don't have to read those words very often. Purport, very short purport. Prabhupada writes, the representatives of the yakshas and rakshasas still exist in some countries of the world. He doesn't mention which ones. That's up to us to decide. It is understood that such uncivilized men take pleasure in killing their own grandfathers and holding a love feast by roasting the bodies. It's interesting because sometimes there's a sense of Prabhupada talks about how these men can do this, and then people interpret, well, that means women can't do this because it doesn't mention women. So here Prabhupada mentions that such uncivilized men take pleasure in killing their own grandfathers, so we can assume that never applies to women. They never do terrible things like that, right? If you can follow that logic, So clearly the previous English was speaking about humanity, the human race, both men and women, various genders. So text 21, we can do together. Devastan aha samdigno.
Devastan aha samdigno.
Mamam jakshata rakshata.
Mamam jakshata.
Home yaksha rakshamsi.
Om yaksha rakshamsi.
Raja yuyam bahupita. Devastamaha sambhigyo.
Devastan aha samdigno.
Mamam yakshata rakshata. Aho me yaksha rakshamsi. Raja yuyam bahuvita. Devastan aha sambhigno. Amam jakshata rakshatam. Aho me yaksha rakshamsi. Raja yuyam bahuvita.
Devastanaha Sambhigno Mamam Jakshata Rakshata Ome Yaksha Rakshamsi Raja Yudyam Babhuvita Devastanaha Sambhigno Mamam Jakshata Rakshata Ome Yaksha Rakshamsi Raja Yudyam Babhuvita
Devastanaha Sambhigno
Devastanaha Sambhigno
Yakshata Rakshata
Mamam Jakshata Rakshata
Ahome Yaksha Rakshanti
Ome Yaksha Rakshamsi
Rajayuyam Bahuvita
Yudyam Babhuvita
Devastanaha Sambhigno
Devastanaha Sambhigno
Mamam Yakshata Rakshata
Mamam Jakshata Rakshata
Yakshata Rakshanti
Ome Yaksha Rakshamsi Yudyam Babhuvita
Who means Deva,
Deva
Lord Brahma.
Lord Brahma
Time unto them.
unto them
Aha said. Samvigya,
Sambhigya
being anxious.
being anxious
Ma, do not.
do not
Mam, me. Yakshata,
Yakshata
eat. Rakshata,
Rakshata
protect. Aho,
Aho
oh. Me, my. Yaksha Rakshamsi,
Yaksha Rakshamsi
O yakshas and rakshasas.
Yakshas
Praja,
Raja
sons. Yuyam,
you
Bahuvita,
Babhuvita
were born. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace. Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Jai.
Brahma, the head of the demigods, full of anxiety, because he's surrounded by these people he just created, and then they're like saying, eat him, kill him, eat him. So he's full of anxiety. He asked them, do not eat me, but protect me. You are born from me and have become my sons. Therefore, you are yakshas and rakshasas. Purport. The demons who were born from the body of Brahma were called yakshas and yakshasas, because some of them cried that Brahma should be eaten, and the others cried that he should not be protected. The ones who said that he should be eaten were called yakshas, and the ones who said that he should not be protected became rakshasas, man-eaters. The two yakshas and rakshasas are the original creation by Brahma and are represented even until today in the uncivilized men who are scattered all over the universe. They are born in the mode of ignorance, and therefore, because of their behavior, they are called rakshasas or man-eaters. Jai, Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastam Pranation. Stays there, so I think what about the same system that I was to tell you. So, Jai Shri Shavara Shavadhyani Jai Jana Bhavani Shri Bhakti Maharani Jai Shri Shri Bhakti. So at home, Radha and Krishna's pastime, Think how funny it is when I come here and I get to give a class about the demons and the different races for different people, I guess. Anyway, it's nice to be here. It's nice to see things going on. Well, in Srila Prabhupada's Philadelphia temple. This is the 16th anniversary of this guy. We'll probably, I think we'll talk about that more tomorrow night. Very important event for all of us, the 16th anniversary of this time. So I won't get into that right now, but it's important. Well, thank you. On Saturday morning, right? This is like the Harinam Saturday. Is it every Saturday or just certain times?
Second Saturday of the month.
Second
we're
Saturday.
dedicated. At least the second Saturday.
Okay. In the summer, maybe more. Winter, maybe less. The summer, because it's Saturday, is a good way to get out, get some fresh air, and purify a few people, give them a chance to stop being yakshas and rakshasas. Yeah. So we're reading his conversation between Maitreya as a title of the whole chapter, conversation between Maitreya and Vidura. So these are two very great personalities in history. And Vidura is asking about the source of the universe. So very briefly, Maitreya is explaining to him how the universe is manifested by Brahma, who's this creative personality. One of the purports, Prabhupada says he's almost independent of Krishna. He was so powerful, but still he was, of course, dependent on Krishna, but still he was so powerful that he had so much potency to actually design and create the whole universe, the good things and the bad things, because this is the place where bad things are manifested. So those bad things need to be created. And Prabhupada gives the example, just like the government, when they create city, they build a house. Oh, there's going to be prisoners. There's going to be people that are going to make some trouble with the larger society. And Prabhupada gives an example. He says that these mentalities, as explained here, they even exist today. And, you know, we can see that. I mean, it's without even analyzing who's right, who's wrong, and all that. The whole world today is so full of conflict. And always those conflicts get down to one way or the other. People thinking, this is my property. I am the enjoyer of this property. You are a threat to my enjoyment of this property. Or oftentimes, I want your property. And then often it goes back to, well, it's your fault. No, it's your fault. No, you started. No, you started. Whether it's little kids or government leaders who have big bombs and missiles and ultimately nuclear weapons, it's still the similar mentality is there. So one problem that arises that's important for us to think of as devotees is that the problem is not out there, the problem is in here. There's a tendency, and this kind of feeds into the whole conflict. People tend to see things as like the good guys and the bad guys. You know, when I was younger, there were cowboy and Indian movies, and the cowboys were always the good guys. No reflection on the South Asians, of course, but the Indians were always the bad guys. And so much so that they didn't even often hire Indian actors, they hired white men mostly and put colors on them or whatever, and they would portray the Indians. And then later, the social perception began to change, where they started to make films where actually the Indians were had their own humanity, and oftentimes the cowboys, who were European colonizers, were the bad guys. And if you study more carefully, you know, I'm not an expert on it all, but it's kind of like, well, some of the cowboys were pretty good guys, and some of them were pretty bad guys, and some of the Indians were pretty good guys, and some were pretty bad guys. So it's more complex than just thinking we're good, they're bad. Like even in religious circles, people tend to get into the mentality that God's on our side, he's not on your side. You know, we're chosen, we're saved, we have the mercy of the Lord, but you don't. And it actually, again, it gets a lot more subtle than that. We have to be careful we don't buy into that continuing kind of dualistic mentality that, well, I'm a devotee and you're not, or I'm advanced and you're not, or we have the mercy of Krishna and you don't. Because many times, we meet people that may not be even a particular structured spiritual practice, but in many ways are very religious and spiritual people, and they're very sincere in their efforts to try to understand God and what's their relationship with Him. And other people may be very much aligned with a particular religious organization, but they don't manifest it while they're devotees. Question is devotees, and that question of how we define ourselves. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives, I'll just read a little bit of it, the 16th chapter, Krishna gives a very elaborate description. The whole chapter is labeled, right? The divine and demoniac natures. He says, I'll just read some English verses. O son of Pritha, in this world, there are two kinds of created beings. One is called divine and the other demoniac. I've already explained to you at length the divine qualities. Now hear from you the demoniac. And he actually, in the first couple verses before, he summarizes it. Before even making that statement in the fourth verse, he says, and here's where we have a chance to look and see, it's not just those people, it's in me too. And where do I have to work on it? Because he says pride. First thing he says is demoniac quality. Of course, we all know devotees, we never have pride. Right? We all know individually, there's no pride in my heart. Right? Of course there is, there's so much. So it's nuances, nuances. Pride, arrogance, conceit, anger, harshness, and ignorance. These qualities belong to those of demoniac nature, O son of Krita. The transcendental qualities are conducive to liberation, whereas the demoniac qualities make for bondage. Do not worry, O son of Pandu, for you are born with the divine qualities. He's talking about Arjuna, he's not talking about us. Right? We're all like very much a mixture. And it's interesting because Krishna says the transcendental qualities are conducive to liberation, demoniac qualities are conducive to bondage. So that we should be thinking, well, how do I develop? How do I awaken? How do I increase the spiritual or transcendental qualities, and how do we become free from the demoniac qualities? So read a little more about those. Those who are demoniac do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Neither cleanliness nor proper behavior nor truth is found in them. Truth is a tough one. Described as it's the last of the four legs of religion. And frankly, oftentimes we become a little influenced by arrogance, although we're supposed to be humble. But we think because we're devotees, therefore we can become arrogant, and therefore we can bend the truth for what works for us, because the cause is transcendental, and then that begins our downward path. Whereas if we're devotees, then we understand, well, wait, we're supposed to develop these spiritual qualities and practices, even when in the short term they don't seem to bring results. Because we know that in the short term, that's the mode of passion. Quick results, right? It describes as like nectar in the beginning, right? You all have experience with little kids. It's like, your mom says, did you take a cookie already? No, right? And there's a pile of crumbs on the floor in front of you. And then next thing you know, you don't get any more cookies. Whereas maybe if you said, yeah, I did, I know I shouldn't have, but I'm sorry. Okay, you can have one more, right? Even when you're a little child, there's this tendency to like bend the truth, right? And these days, oh my gosh, because I do communications work, so I have to kind of follow a little bit what's going on in the world. And I'm reminded of it was a good friend of mine when Kenneth Cracknell, Dr. Kenneth Cracknell, he passed away a couple of years ago. He was a Christian scholar, and he's actually got an article coming out of the upcoming book about Christian conscious movement. Our 50th anniversary, that book is finally being published from a conference held at Harvard University. But at his funeral a couple of years ago, one of his daughters is a judge, and they're reminiscing about their father. When it was her turn to speak. And he's very super nice person, very gentle guy. His physical appearance, he was made to be Santa Claus at Christmas, like full white beard and soft nature and big belly and laughed and the whole thing. But his daughter described how when they were young, when they would like watch television or something or the news, their father trained them to think, why is this person lying to me? Why are they lying to me? To have that kind of sense of like, well, what are they possibly? And these days it's so sad because oftentimes even big leaders, maybe especially, they say one thing, you think like, well, you're just saying that because you're doing the opposite and you're just trying to confuse us. So in this way, neither cleanliness nor proper behavior nor truth is found in them. They say this world is unreal with no foundation, no God in control. They say it is produced of sex desire and is no cause other than lust. Following such conclusions, the demoniac who are lost in themselves and have no intelligence, doesn't mean they're not intelligent materially, but no ability to discriminate between spiritual and material in the ultimate sense. They engage in unbeneficial, horrible works meant to destroy the world, taking shelter of insatiable lust, and absorbed in the conceit of pride and false prestige. The demoniac, thus illusioned, are always sworn to unclean work attracted by the impermanent. They believe that to gratify the senses is the prime necessity of human civilization. Thus, at the end of life, their anxiety is immeasurable. Until the end of life, their life anxiety is immeasurable, bound by a network of hundreds of thousands of desires. Absorbed in lust and anger, they secure money by illegal means for sense gratification. Like people get really carried away with these two money and tendencies, and it goes on. This is the kind of thing as well. The demoniac, read this last one. The demoniac person thinks, so much wealth do I have today, I will gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, and it will increase in the future more and more. He is my enemy, and I have killed him. And my other enemies will also be killed. Who saw the Mahana Srina Avatar film? See them? Most of us, yeah. Hiranyakashipu was pretty good at all this stuff. I am the Lord of everything. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I am the richest man surrounded by aristocratic relatives. There is none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices. I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. Then the Lord concludes. In this way, such persons are deluded by ignorance, thus perplexed by various anxieties and bound by network illusions. They become too strongly attached to sense enjoyment and fall down into hell. So we can read that, as I mentioned, either like, okay, there's those guys out there, and there are people more inclined to those types of qualities. Or we can read in the more practical sense, how does it really apply to us by saying, to what extent are these qualities manifest in me? We all experience, sometimes we are more kind. Sometimes we are more respectful to others. Sometimes we're more sensitive to others. Sometimes we act in more selfless ways. Other times we feel and sometimes may act more angry, more bitter. Sometimes we're disrespectful of other people. Sometimes we're more selfish. Sometimes we even can act in abusive ways. So then we should ask why. I can remember as a junior in high school, I took French, and who was it? She's not anymore. There's Lady Devotee yesterday. She's got a difficult name for me to pronounce, from Bengal, who speaks Bengali, Hindi, English, German, and she's working on Spanish, and she wants to learn French and Italian. I was like, wow. Because like for me, like French was like, wow, not my thing. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, she's like amazing. I don't have those skills at all. So I remembered French class in the back of my notebook because I was so bored. I like made little comments, which later on I just was really kind of a profound. So like today's a really good day, and then it was like a day or a week later, it's like things are really rotten, and then like I am so hopeful for the future, and then things are not working out the way I planned. And I don't remember this, but you know, junior in high school probably had a few of these. She loves me, she doesn't love me, you know. So it was all this up and down. And I remember looking at it later and thinking, And maybe in the process, what's going on here? I mean, why is it like one day it's up, the next day? Like, it's not like I pre-programmed it. Okay, Tuesday is going to be a rotten day, right? Wednesday is going to be really good. We don't do that. We are very much affected. It's like we're being knocked around. We really are by the modes of material nature. You know? And of course, the weather is the example of that, as we said, end of winter, springtime, now up and down and up and down. The same way, like, I mean, I was talking with Jai Krishna and New Vrindavan, they import like a lot of things from India. They're kind of become, they distribute them to different temples and things. It's like tariffs are up, tariffs are down, tariffs are up, tariffs are down, right? It's like, like business, profits are up, profits are down. So it's the whole nature of this crazy world. So why is that? That's what we should ask. A lot of people, they'll just say, they'll just describe themselves, I'm angry, right? I'm not angry. I'm feeling anger, I'm not bitter, I'm feeling bitterness. I'm not lusty, I'm feeling lust. I'm not unhappy, I'm feeling, it's the feeling, it's not me actually. So this is described in the Gita that every living entity, all of us, were born into this world, Krishna says, 7th chapter, I believe, overwhelmed by desire and hate. This is the nature of this world. So the soul, our understanding is the soul, each of us, we're pure. Sometimes it becomes a little discouraging to see the way we think, the way we act, the influences that are pushing us around. But actually described in our Shastra, our theology, our philosophy, we're not actually these influences. It's just because we're in this body, we feel the influence of the body. And we also, we're very much subject to the influence of those things that are around us. Just like we said, a few days ago, it's like a beautiful day. And I noticed, I just walked into the mailbox, all the neighbors are smiling. It's like, how are you today? Oh, I'm great. Beautiful day, isn't it? Oh, it's beautiful, right? You see them a couple days later, all covered up, but it's snowing and it's raining. And it's like, how are you doing? I don't talk to you. Right? So much influence. So we're influenced by sounds, right? Like with summer coming, you drive around, a lot of times your windows are down. You pull up at one red light, and somebody pulls up next to you, and it's like some sound, some music. They got the radio on, and you listen to when you were younger, or it's one of your favorite. It's like, oh, I like that song. So it's like, yeah, we think, oh, by the influence of that sound, we feel good. And then you stop at the next light and the window's down and it's some music, like for me, it's like boom, boom, boom. Or this like, it's not like sound, so like your whole body starts to vibrate. It's like, put the window on. Influenced by those things. We go to different places, we're influenced. Isn't it like I've noticed I'm particularly disturbed. This country is becoming so, from my perspective, overwhelmed with trash. It's like, I remember as a kid, people would throw like, whatever, a pop can, in Michigan, they call it pop, a soft drink can out the window, okay, made of aluminum. Within a few years, it's gone. They don't do that anymore, plastic. And it just builds up and builds up and builds up. And people think like, well, who cares? It's just, I'm never, right? If you throw your plastic bottle out the window, you're going to see it again. You're never going to see it again. So who cares? Just throw it out because the world's for you to enjoy and exploit. But the thoughtful person is, no, it's just going to accumulate. And all those bottles and other garbage by the side of the road, that's the accumulation of other people who don't care, who don't think about it. And it creates a really intense, unclean, unpleasant environment for all of us. I worked in a factory one summer when I was in university, making a little bit of money, help cover the cost. And it was a brand new factory, so it was bright, it was clean. The cafeteria was bright and clean, but it was hellish. And later I read Prabhupada says in one of the purports of Bhagavatam, place, he says, factory is another word for hell. And I remember I experienced that. I was there for just 3 months. So a lot of people, that's their life. That's all they do. They go to the factory. At least when I was there, a big percentage of them, they get intoxicated every morning, they get intoxicated every break, because that's the only way they can tolerate it, because it's quite unpleasant. And I remember for months afterwards, just driving by a factory, I felt, kind of like a visceral reaction just to seeing it, because I know what's inside there. Most people that drive by the factory on the freeway, you don't even think about it. You never bother to think about what is inside. But if you've been in there, then the experience is very negative. So you go to a forest, perhaps we're uplifted, right? Like that bright sunny day, I was walking on the pond, like, oh, the first time you see the fish, the first time you see the ducks, the first time you see the little baby turtles. Like, oh, aren't they cute? Of course, again, then it snows a few days later, they all disappear, up and down and up and down. And by people, we all experience that. Certain people, they, as the expression goes, they lift us up, right? And certain people, they bring us down, right? I don't know if they used to use that expression. Used to say, he's a real downer, right? As a person that brings me down. Some people in the office, it's like, they don't come, they're sick, they're like, oh, wow, that's really good. Stay home as long as you can. It's just their presence, right? They walk in the office, it's like the whole energy gets uptight by them. So that's a problem for us, actually, how we're influenced by these things. As been described here, we're going way back to the beginning of the universe. These negative and positive influences were there. So that's one problem for us. The second problem is that, one of many problems, a second problem, perhaps the first one, is that we can see and we experience that many of the things that are advertised to us, forced upon us, taught into us as important things to pursue in this life, they don't actually bring the promised benefits. They simply don't do that. And at best, things that people achieve in this world, they're just short-lived. Again, I live in an apartment building, so there's like one young couple, they're all happy, they're all smiling, they're moving out of the apartment building into another apartment building down the street. But I know people that lived at that apartment building who moved out of that apartment building to get to some other place because that apartment building didn't make them happy. But they're thinking when we move to that apartment, we'll be happy. But I know people from there who weren't happy. Why are you thinking you're going to be happy? Well, because the signs said we're going to be happy. So we're going to be happy. So whether it's power, whether, all the things people pursue in this world, power, money, sex, fame, beauty. I mean, I have a male body, there's less pressure really on those of us that have male bodies this time around. But it's a fact, I mean, even you read about like in Hollywood, actresses and actors, it's always a big thing with who's getting paid more. And generally, the career of actors kind of, as they get older, it kind of continues. The actresses, it just like you reach a certain point, it's like they don't hire you anymore. You're not young and pretty anymore. They don't want you. It's like, but I'm not this body. I'm the person inside it. No, we're going to treat you like the body. Or in other things, it certainly doesn't just happen to women. People that are like, sometimes you see these things that you can look it up. People that win the lottery. Right? It's like, oh, you're a truck driver and you win $1 million. And all of a sudden, out of the woodwork, you got a lot of friends. All your friends from high school, they call you Drona. I don't think your legal name's still Drona. It's David, right? Say, David, I just read you won $1 million. I just want you to know that, like, ever since high school 35 years ago, I've always thought of you because you've always been my best friend. And I really missed you. And I just thought I should come over and see you now that you're rich. No, I mean, now that I know where you are. Right? You're surrounded by those people until the money goes away. And as soon as the money goes away, then they go away. I was flying to India a couple months ago in the airport in Switzerland. I like to stop and look and see what books are popular that people are reading, which is the current illusions that are gathering people's minds. There was a book about something. I should go back and look at this name. It was a biography of somebody who died a few years ago, but recently, and he had created some product and he sold what he had to Hewlett Packard for, I believe, $4 billion. So wow, he's okay. And then it said, this just on the cover, I didn't read no book, but it's in that time, big thick book. $4 billion. And then, but he got entangled in all kinds of legal problems. So he's down again, right? These things that make people want to buy books, right? It's exciting. Then he solved his legal problems. And so life looked good. But then he was on his private yacht with family and friends, and the yacht sunk, and I think it said, I gotta go back and check, his 5 daughters, they all drowned. At least him and his daughter, for sure, one daughter, excuse me. They were still breathing the dust of Mayapur. I don't know where it is. So at least he and one daughter, they drowned. Big private yacht, wealthy people. And of course, you know, there's so many examples. Who is this guy? Who wasn't he a Pakistani businessman, billionaire, wanted to do something really exciting with his 14-year-old son? So we're not just gonna like go on a yacht. That's like, everybody has a yacht, right? It's just like an ordinary thing. We're not just gonna go to some fancy place and, you know, rent Caesar's palace for ourselves. We're gonna go down in a submarine to the bottom of the ocean to explore the Titanic, which nobody gets to do. And unfortunately, something wasn't calculated right, and the whole thing gets crushed and you're gone. I can't say what's the future of people that wanted to go to the bottom of the ocean to swim around. Can't say for sure, but it's probably not really good, right? God's in your heart, that's what you want to do, right? There are bodies that can swim around at 6 miles under the ocean, but they find them sometimes. So great, that's the destiny we want. So it's described in the Bhagavad Gita that the different pleasures of this world, like destined mode of passions, the nectar in the beginning and poison at the end. So, so many examples, so we have the agency. This is what's important for us practically. We have the agency. We could be wealthy, we could be poor, we could be famous, we could be infamous, we could be highly educated or not. We still maintain the agency, whatever our situation is, to change our association. And we need to change our association and change those things that influence us in such a way that we will be elevated. That's the choice that we have. But it's hard to do because of our senses. Our senses are still pulled to certain things, generally materialistic things. Our mind is pulled to different things. We have habits that force us in certain ways. And those influences are very strong. Prabhupada used to tell the story of the man who was a thief who went on a pilgrimage. And in the middle of the night, everybody's sleeping. They've been walking some distance and they're all tired, they're all asleep. And the man who's a thief in the middle of the night, because he can't help himself, he's got to steal. So he goes and he steals everybody's luggage, but he feels really bad about it. So he doesn't really take anything from the luggage. He just moves luggage from your room, puts it outside your room. All night long, he's moving luggage. He can't stop stealing the luggage, but at least he's got enough strength to like not go inside and steal the possessions. So in the morning, everybody wakes up. Where's my things? You know, where's my things? Where's my things? And they're like, well, wait, this is yours, isn't it? And then he confessed. He said, please forgive me. I came in this pilgrimage to try to get purified, but I'm a thief. What can I do? It's so hard for me. But he didn't steal anything, but he couldn't control that. So, you know, that's why it's so hard for us. Upstairs, I'm staying in the room down the hall from the Sunday school. So I was reading this morning some of the pledges made by the children, I guess from a couple months ago, about what I will do this year. And what's like my New Year's pledge and things like that. And they were, you know, kids wrestling with the material energy and trying to become more Krishna conscious. And one of them said, I will watch less television. So that's like, you know, even as a kid, you got to like wrestle with like your sensual desires, you know, keep away from Krishna. So the idea is gradually we want to choose more and more spiritual association. And therefore, great sages and pure devotees that represent as the Lord, they wander all over the earth. Krishna himself comes to give us the ability to make the right choices, to make better choices. So how do we do that? So we need sharpened intelligence, like describes these demoniac are less intelligent. They can be very intelligent in how to manipulate the material energy, but they don't have the ability to discriminate between spirit and matter. So we want to sharpen our intelligence, which comes through hearing, reading the Shastra, coming together, listening to Prabhupada's lectures, listening to that, advanced devotees and hearing together. We need spiritual strength because sometimes we know what we ought to be doing, but it's hard to say no. So we need the spiritual strength, which comes through our process of bhakti yoga, especially through chanting, controlling our mind and gaining the strength to say no to those things. We need association. It's really important, sometimes difficult. But we need association. We need devotees to say, hey, please come to the temple on Saturday, or please go out with us on Harinam, or please do this, or please do that, or I noticed you seem to be having a little difficulties, or something I can do to help, or I've noticed we haven't seen you in a while, we're missing you, please come to the temple. And that's, of course, a time when it's really important for us to show some understanding and compassion. It's not the time to say, I haven't seen you in 4 weeks, you must have been in Maya. Right? Or 4 months, or 4 years, right? You know, when you see the pictures of Krishna when he's hugging the devotee, comes back to the spiritual world, against the P.T. Sharma or somebody, you never see Krishna like, where you been? You see pictures of Krishna? Krishna's like, wow, you're back. Come, let's play. Right? So like, if Krishna's so kind, you know, who are we? Sometimes we have to kind of like point out to somebody, you know, like, I'm seeing you in 3 days, 12 hours and 37 minutes. Where you been? What are you doing? That doesn't help. We should really create an environment, a sangha, where everyone is appreciated and encouraged. And therefore, you know, we have probably traveled all around the world and built these temples. And I was hearing recently in one part of the world, they were saying there, we don't have a lot of brahmacharis here, so not so many, but they were saying that in this place, the brahmacharis and some, they don't have the money to do it, but they're building big temples. And the brahmacharis this is the perception of this person was relating. The brahmacharis have like so many demands of what needs to be done to push on Krishna consciousness that the householders are freaking out from the pressure. Give more money, come more often, do this. And the householders like, wait, I got kids, I got a job, I got a house, I have all these different things I have to do. So it was an interesting, I thought, wow, that's a new twist of Maya. I haven't heard that one before. Another way of distracting us from what we need to do. So we need to be cautious. We need to protect each other. We need to subtly, gradually, more than subtly, gradually increase the association of the spiritual energy, gradually say no to things, which is very kind. Prabhupada says the word gradually over and over and over again in his lectures and his books. Prabhupada described, I was mentioning to somebody yesterday, Prabhupada said, actually, all of my disciples are very good. They just have one problem. Prabhupada heard this before, said, they're not afraid enough of Maya. That's the one problem. We're not afraid enough of Maya. We don't realize how the influence that the material energy has on us. But Prabhupada also writes in the Gita, the success is guaranteed for the rigid practitioner. And we see sometimes even we may not be so rigid, maybe that slackens, but Krishna allows us to come back again and take shelter of lotus feet. So Krishna wants to help us. He is helping us. And so many different ways. We have the devotees, we have the deities, we have our devotional service, we have the holy name, we have Prabhupada's books, we have the kirtan, we have lectures, we have festivals, so many things now, ways to pull ourselves more and more into the spiritual association. So whatever negative or demonic is a strong word, but you know, Christians use that word, demonic influences there, pride, arrogance, conceit, these things are pulling at us. So how do we get free from those? We need to associate more and more with the spiritual energy, take on those qualities, because that is who we are. We should never doubt. Krishna says we are by nature pure spiritual beings. Sometimes our mind makes us think, well, I'm not qualified, I'll never get there. Well, no, you're only this far away. We've got a human form of life, we've got the holy name, we've got the mercy and pure devotees, we've got the process of devotional service, Lord Chaitanya's time, he's come to make it easy. We're like that far away. But Maya's saying, nope, you're not going to make it. You're not fit. You're not qualified. You have too many obstacles. It's never going to happen, right? That's just our mind. Who Krishna tells us in the Gita is our what?
Best friend.
Best friend if we control it, right? And if we don't, the mind is our what? Worst enemy, right? So our worst enemy likes to tell us all so many things. I'll just end with this in the Mahabharata. There's a nice part where Karna or Radheya is going to be fighting the next day with Arjuna. And Radheya goes to Duryodhana. He says, Duryodhana, I can beat him. I know I can beat him, but there's a problem. He's got Krishna driving his chariot. I need a really good charioteer. So I believe it's Salva. Yeah. Well, he says, I need Salva. It was like a great king. So like you're asking, it's one thing Krishna's like becomes the chariot driver of his devotee, but like to ask a king to become the chariot, it's kind of like asking like the president of the United States to drive Uber for a couple of days, you know. So Radheya asked Duryodhana to ask Salva to please do that. So Duryodhana, he's very diplomatic. He goes to Salva and somehow he convinces him he'll drive the chariot of Radheya for the next day's big battle. Yudhishthira hears through his spies this is happening, so he realizes, okay, this is a problem. Yudhishthira's a little worried about this. So he goes in the evening, which would sometimes do, into the camp of the Kauravas and sees Salva and says, I have one favor to ask. He was his uncle, actually. He said, one favor to ask. He says, oh, what's that? He said, I know you're going to drive the chariot tomorrow, but you're going to fight Arjuna. Please discourage him. Please say unkind words. So he says, well, this is highly unusual. No, please, my one request. He says, okay, I'll do it. Yes. So the next day they're riding out for battle. He's the chariot driver. And the chariot driver, you're like the partner with the warrior, right? You're like, okay, we're going to get him. We're going to crush him today. And you read in the Mahabharata and other, Christian book things when they're going out to fight. I was like, bring him before me. I've got the strength of an elephant. I'm crushing. He's just like a fly. So Radheya is saying things like that. Take me out to Arjuna where I can defeat him today. And his own chariot driver says, are you kidding? Defeat him? You don't stand a chance. No, I'm strong like an elephant. He's like a fly. You're not like an elephant. He's the elephant. You're the fly. Whatever he was saying, things like that. So Radheya, like they use an American expression, he's like, whatever. Just drive me out there, just shut up. Will you be quiet? And after a while, it's described that Salva actually was so impressed by Radheya's skills, he stopped saying those things. He could only do it for a certain period of time. But what's the point in that story? And it's a history, but for us, one application of understanding is because when there's those nagging voices behind, it discourages. So that's why the material energy tries to help keep us there, discouraging voices. So we need to surround ourselves with uplifting voices. Maybe even more importantly, we need to be that uplifting voice with others. Because sometimes just a little bit of encouragement can make a lot of difference for people. Make a lot of difference for people. And we all know we're pure devotees at heart, we're covered over, and in this lifetime is the opportunity for us to be awakened. And we're meant to be messengers of Krishna. We're meant to go out into the public and tell people the same thing. You can do this too, it's possible. So just some thoughts on these verses. Maybe we'll stop and see if this time for questions. Go to them.
Yeah, okay.
Go to what do we normally go to?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock. Okay, good. 8 minutes. That's a lot of time. Any questions or comments? Anybody like to make? Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you for class. So I like the point that. So
I'm wondering this kind if anybody ever asked a question, said, thanks for the terrible class. It's like every class in this kind is wonderful. We're so appreciative. So thank you for your appreciation.
I like multiple points. One of them is when the human soul goes back to the spiritual planet. Krishna is not pointing and why you are so late, but he just came back because he knows that finally we are fully in the mind.
And we forget that he knows everything.
We have been eagerly waiting for
A long list.
Yes. I really like that point. And also the story of Shanva, that he keeps on pestering the Karna so that when we surrounded by negative emotions even within us, we keep doubting ourselves. So we have to always keep in good association.
Sometimes you have to just tell the mind, shut up. I don't know if there's a softer way of saying it. Those of you from other countries originally, but it's a great American term. But we should only use it not to other people. It's a good thing to tell our mind. Just shut up. Quit telling me these lies. I am a pure devotee. I have the mercy of Prabhupada. I have the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. I have the holy name. I'm temporarily covered, and I'm going to become uncovered despite whatever disqualifications I may have. I can become perfect again by Krishna's mercy. We have to be reminding ourselves, and we should be reminding ourselves that too. We have a very uplifting message. Our message is very, very, very uplifting. It's stark. It's, you know, we don't hide from the truth of what an unfortunate situation we're in. We don't hide from the truth that if you cause harm to other living entities, you will reap the results of that. You know, we're pretty blunt on some of those things, but you know, meaning the tradition and we're participating in it, it's very clear at the same time. It's bad stuff, but there's alternatives, and we all have the full potential for that. Do you want to add another comment, or you were just reflecting on what?
No,
Okay, great, good, glad those things like John.
This is an interesting pastime because we have Lord Brahma, who's the father, and his sons come back to eat him, and they try to protect him.
Yeah.
To try and so you can see how that must have really been devastating to Lord Brahma. I was thinking how I wanted to get you to explain a little bit. So the spiritual master is our spiritual father, and you're here teaching the disciples course this week. Sometimes as the sons, the disciples, sons and daughters, the disciples, there are instances where this happens, not that they'll come back to physically eat them, but they may come back and maybe undercut, disobey. And this happened at times with Srila Prabhupada. How did Srila Prabhupada handle situations like that? Where the sons, mostly probably sons, came back to challenge the authority or tried to undercut, and in one sense tried to hurt the society that Srila Prabhupada has built.
Yeah, and from what I observed and have studied and read about how Prabhupada dealt with that, Prabhupada was very forgiving of mistakes, especially when they were unintentional. He didn't look at that part first. Several devotees were like his secretaries, things like that. They'll say, if you made a mistake once, Prabhupada was like, no problem, don't worry about it, just learn. If you did it a second time, you were in big trouble. Because he pointed out to you, you shouldn't do that, whatever it was. Don't walk up the stairs so fast because you tripped and dropped everything. Okay, no problem. But if you do a second time, look, you learned. So that's there. You manifest that quality of compassion and forgiveness, but also being sharp and harsh if somebody did the same thing a second time. I just happened to read, it was really quite shocking. There was one disciple who became very offensive. And I think he went to Radhakund, he took shelter, some Babaji's there, or said he was going to. And I don't have it, I just read it like 2 days ago. And he actually said some things to Prabhupada like, you know, I don't think you can awaken the highest thing in me. Something like that. Really, you know, please bless me to find a bona fide guru. I think that's what he said. And Prabhupada's response was really heavy. I bless you, you know, something not very nice. But that's very, very rare. The Prabhupada interacted with hundreds of thousands of people. And he was always so compassionate. And when you think about it, you know, Prabhupada came from Vrindavan. Everybody was so much focused on Krishna there. And he came to like the most degraded parts of the world, went to the most degraded places. You know, you see pictures of like, you know, when Prabhupada went to the mantra rock dance. Others are like young, very sensuous people. You know, drugs were everywhere and illicit sex was everywhere and everybody was eating meat. And, you know, and probably like overlooked all of that. I mean, even like us, if we were asked, I mean, you know, Leela Rita, there's like, sometimes Prabhupada was invited to go to like a couple places, they were practically like drug dens, like Prabhupada just walked in like dark and everyone's like laying around and just half conked out. Prabhupada would sit and give lecture about Krishna, you know, he was like so gracious, well, they invited me, I have to go. You know, and the devotees were like, Prabhupada, you can't go in there. You know, it's like, no, I must. That whole argument between the New York devotees and San Francisco, whether Prabhupada should go to the Mantra Rock dance. And New York devotees were, Prabhupada, you can't go there. Prabhupada's like, well, you know, I'll think about it. Then he said, no, I have to go. It's my duty. So he was so much the personification of being compassionate. And even, I mean, there's cases where Prabhupada knew some of his disciples, again, you know, engaged in very sinful activities, and Prabhupada just accepted them back. And there were some cases Prabhupada said, leave Manga Artik. You know, you go tomorrow, you chant. You know, when there's so many other people that are strictly following that person to chant, to lead the chanting. So generally, you know, he really embodied, exemplified this principle that the process of Krishna consciousness can purify anybody and everybody. And at the same time, when people become awake, just like we read yesterday in the Disciples Course, there was exchange with some devotees in Hawaii who came to Prabhupada complaining about some of the other devotees and in particular the way they were kind of going out and trying to spread Krishna consciousness. And Prabhupada said, well, then you do better. And then also he said, if they say, he had this whole logical progression, he said, they say they don't like the GBC, they don't like my instruction, that means they don't like me. That means, you know, he goes through this whole thing about what the real seed of the mentality is. So from it starts a long-winded answer, but if our desire remains pure, Krishna will forgive us, he'll help us to do better. But if one becomes, you know, too repetitively offensive and harmful, then eventually, you know, Krishna's, I mean, in the 16th chapter, Krishna says, I cast them out. You know, there's some scholars of the Gita, they say that's the essence. You know, Krishna casts you out. That's not the Gaudiya Vaishnava. We focus on those verses. Krishna says, I forgive you. Doesn't matter how bad you are, I'll take you back because you are loved by me. Right? 18th chapter says they're loved by me. But, you know, some translations in some schools of the Gita emphasize that part. Krishna's like, sometimes you see some Christian doctrine, heaven, hell, heaven, hell. Is that helpful?
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, we understand Paramatma is there. I mean, you don't read any of them. Krishna doesn't say, okay, in the lower planets, and some pretty graphic descriptions of the lower planets and hellish bodies, and nowhere do you don't read Krishna doesn't say, I will go with you through the first 4,300,000 species, the rest of them forget it, I'm not going there. Right? Do you read that anywhere? No, he goes with us, he's in Paramatma, never leaves. Even to the, you know, those 6 mile under the ocean, whatever they are, fish or some aquatic creatures living in the dark, Paramatma is still there, which is quite astounding to think of that. Yeah. Other questions or comments? Yes, Baruch. I looked at you like the sun's coming up, all of a sudden I couldn't, wow, voltage.
You mentioned whatever is going on in US today.
And the whole world, not just here.
Yeah, so we are in US, so let's focus on US. How this type of works, that the kids are coming to the power. In terms of having a very,
I wouldn't use this section for a Sunday feast lecture. People might have a hard time. What are you guys talking about?
so this is exactly what is happening today in this metro. How we, as a practitioner of Prabhupada's teachings, how can we do a little better to make both sides understand that this is not right? And
It's a good question for a judge to ask.
so what is your, how we
Well,
can,
part of it is, like I said in the beginning, understanding that, it's not that there's like demons, especially in this age, maybe in the past, but there's demons and there's devotees. I mean, we are not Prahlad and they are not Hiranyakashipu. They, however we define they. It's these tendencies, pride, arrogance, conceit. We're all struggling with those things, selfishness, anger. We all make mistakes. So it has to start with as devotees, we've got to be ready to be self-critical. And we have to be ready to see that, first of all, we have to be confident Krishna loves us. If you don't have that confidence, that ultimately behind it all, there's an all-loving God who accepts me with all of my troubles. With that conviction, it's a lot easier to face the realities of the shortcomings. Just like we talk about how it's important, and leaders and all of us to be able to give and take feedback. So if somebody comes to me and says, Anuttama, you quoted the wrong verse, or that was too this or that, critiques, it's very hard for me to accept that if I'm not feeling confident in that, ultimately I'm pure devotee and Krishna loves me. I'm eternally connected to Krishna, and I got to peel off these layers of stuff. So when you point out some stuff, some bad things, some qualities that aren't so good, I'm glad to hear that because it's going to help me make progress. But if I'm not feeling particularly confident in my ultimate reality of who I am, my relation with Krishna, I can't hear that from you. I get offended, I get angry by that. Even if you're a very, very well-meaning person. So part of it is, it's a complicated question, but part of it is we have to show kind of genuine compassion towards everybody. We have to ourselves not get caught up in thinking he's my friend, he's my enemy. But have genuine compassion and concern. And really pray to Krishna to give us intelligence, how we can say things and do things in a way that's helpful for everybody. And to really stop and pray and ask Krishna what will be most effective for me to say and do in this circumstance for their benefit. Let me not act out of, I don't like it when people are like that, so I'm gonna tell them what I think. Or I learned to not do that 15 years ago. They should have learned that by now. We have to get rid of all those things that we're all affected by and really think, I'm Krishna's servant. Krishna loves each and every person. They're having some particular challenge or problem. What can I say to them at this point that they're able to hear to take them to the next step towards living in a really saintly and godly way? What's the one way? And sometimes it's just being people's friend. Sometimes it's speaking a little straightforwardly, maybe not harshly, but straightforwardly. But the real secret is, the question is, am I telling this because it satisfies my senses? Or am I telling this because it's going to be helpful to them? That's the challenge. Because a lot of times we want to say things to people and correct people just because it's the urge of me. I want to be in control because I'm angry, because I think I'm better than you are, whether I recognize that or not, that's what I'm telling. As opposed to like, I'm your servant. Even Prabhupada describes his father, sometimes would have to, I think he uses the word chastise him or correct him. And his father would say, I have to correct you now. Please understand, even Mahaprabhu's father sometimes corrected him, so I have to do it too. He was like asking forgiveness from his child before he even corrected him. He was such a saintly person. So, at least maybe we don't speak like that every time, but we should try to think like that. And then people will, as much as possible, they'll hear it a lot easier if they know it's really well intended. Is that okay?
thank you.
It's a complicated question. It's like we gotta work on that our whole life. Those are a couple thoughts. So now I can't see the clock at all because of the sun, but I know it's after 9, so we should stop. Okay, thank you all very much for giving your lives and your minutes and your days to Krishna. And let's all continue to practice as best we can and know that Krishna is our best friend. He is helping us. And as Brahma says, success is guaranteed. You just have to stick to the process. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. Thank you, devotees, for joining in online. I will see you tomorrow. Anuttama Prabhu will be speaking at the Sunday feast tomorrow evening. And we also have our Sankirtan, monthly Sankirtan festival, 2:00 at Rittenhouse Square, 18th and Walnut Street.
Or from the temple at 1, right?
Yes, and if you want to carpool, we'll leave from the temple at 1:00. Jai. Srila Prabhupada ki